First off, good email marketing is permission-based, so people give you permission to send those emails. And second off, because we're always checking our inboxes. We're there all day long, and we consider inboxes, most people consider them a part of their workday. Whereas when you go onto a social media platform, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, I'm wasting time, most likely. But your email inbox can be work. And so you can check it a lot throughout the day. So it's the fact that people are in their inboxes quite a bit. I think it's on average, we check it like 20 sometimes a day. So we're there all the time. Everybody has an email address, even if they don't use social media. So there's just wide audience that's on the platform all the time, the platform being the inbox. And that makes it very effective. And then finally, as I mentioned, that it's permission-based. So good email marketing, our subscribers are inviting us to go into their inbox and send them content.
And what are some of the best practices that you would recommend an email marketer needs to follow?
Yeah, number one, don't buy email lists. Buying email lists is again, when you buy an email list, it's first off, you're not using permission marketing. You're sending people content without their permission, which will really tank your open rates and your click-through rates, which in turn might tank your email deliverability. And so you might have a hard time getting into the inbox because ISPs like Gmail and Yahoo often base deliverability on whether people are opening and clicking your emails. So that's one reason. Two, buying email lists, I consider it a bit unethical. I wouldn't want my email address sold. And so I'm not going to send to people who, without their permission, had their email address sold. And then third, you bump into some legal issues with buying email lists in certain countries. So for instance, you may have heard of the GDPR, and that's big in the European Union. So if you have any email subscribers who reside in the European Union, you can't use purchase lists unless you want to risk getting in legal trouble. And that's also the case in California, in the United States. And there are a lot of other countries that have spam regulations and regulations against buying email lists. So I recommend don't buy an email list. And then two, send email content that's wanted and expected. So content that your subscribers want in their inbox, so it's valuable to them, useful to them, informative, humorous, entertaining, and then expected in that when they subscribe to get emails from you, they know what kind of content you're going to send them. And so, for instance, if you have a blog where you talk about home improvement, you send them emails about home improvement because that's what they expect from you. And you don't send them, an email about hair care, for instance. So sending wanted and expected emails.
Nice. And also, there is a straight no for buying an email list. What do you think is the most important email metric to track to understand your campaign performance?
It's probably either your sales rate from your emails or your click-through rate. Those are the two that I always measure. You're not always going to have sales for an email. Sometimes you're just measuring click-through rate. But that's what I think is most important. And that's what's most easy to track. A lot of people focus on open rates, but open rates are notoriously inaccurate for a slew of reasons. So while I always keep an eye on open rates, I don't think they should be what email marketers should obsess over. Instead, look at click-through rates and your sales from your email.
So how do you actually target to increase the list? What are the recommendations to increase the list organically?
So one of the best ways to grow your list organically or really naturally is to have a lead magnet, which is a piece of free content that you give people in exchange for subscribing. So for instance, I have a lead magnet on my own website, and it's called How to Get Benchmark Busting Email Open Rates. And so I talk about the topic of open rates, and also I talk about how they can be inaccurate. And so it's a piece of free content I share on my website. I also share share it on social media platforms. It really organically gets me a lot of email subscribers, and you create that lead magnet once and you optimize it over time and improve it. But it's a great way to grow your list. And again, grow your list via bringing people in with really great content.
And any tips and tricks or best practices that one should know in email marketing, like length of the subject or the actual content in the mail? Any tips there?
Yeah, so one of the things I recommend of email content, especially if you're struggling to write email content, is to use copywriting formulas. I use copywriting formulas all the time myself, and they're really effective. And so what they are is it's basically, a guide on what to have in your email content. One of my favorites is called PAS, P-A-S, and it stands for problem, agitation, solution. So you introduce a problem in the first line of your email or in your subject line. And then as the email content goes on, you agitate that problem. So you're explaining in clear detail why it's such a massive issue and like what problems does this problem even cause. And you really make people feel that problem. And you're trying to get them to think here, like, yes, this is exactly what I'm dealing with. And at that point, you introduce a solution to the problem. And so, for instance, if it's an email and you're sending a blog post, the solution to the problem might be the blog post. So if you have a blog post you've written on, 20 ways to grow your email list, the problem you might introduce at the beginning of your email is it's really hard to grow an email list. And you might have tried X, Y, and Z to grow your list, and it might not have worked. And then you go on and agitate this problem. Then you're like, hey, but here's a solution. We wrote this post on 20 ways to grow your email list. Check it out. And so that would be an example of a copywriting formula. There are a bunch of them. If you Google copywriting formulas, you'll find them. They'll come up. But I use a lot of these formulas because one of the hardest things when it comes to writing content in general is starting with a blank page. And copywriting formulas give you basically an outline for your email without you ever even needing to write the outline. And so it's really helpful. And so I'd recommend formulas. And then as far as subject lines and subject line length, there's a few things to keep in mind. One is that in most inboxes, subject lines get cut off at somewhere between 30 and 40 characters. So on mobile devices. So if you want to, cater towards your mobile readers, which mobile readers, according to Litmus, a recent study, make up around 50% of your email subscribers. And so if you want to cater towards those mobile readers, you might want to keep your subject lines at 30 characters or less, it's a pretty short subject line. And then make sure to use your preview text, which appears to the right of the subject line, to add context. So you can try short subject lines, but you can also, if you really want to stand out and be different, try really long subject lines. They'll get cut off on mobile, certainly, which could make people curious actually, because it got cut off and they're like, oh, what does this subject line say? It can work. It might work for some people and not others. I've seen certain email marketers who are very successful and they have these crazy long subject lines. And then I've seen others who they have subject lines and they're 2 words. Like the words might be, email marketing. That might be the subject line. And again, it's like, it's typically the topic of the email. And for this individual, it's Brian Dean, the founder of Backlinko. It works really well.